Hello, everyone. Gather around. Time for Yodis to talk about Flix. It's going to be amazing. So I just want to introduce us both really quickly. My name's Maddie. I'm the product manager on Flix. And right next to me is Yodis Katsambas. He's a technology supervisor at Sony Pictures Animation. And he's going to speak to how Sony handles pre-production. And they did a near impossible feat this year, which was releasing 4 full CG animated features in a single year, which is ridiculous. Included amongst those was Emoji Movie, which came out this weekend. Hooray, congratulations to you guys on that. You guys are going to see some excellent poop jokes and such from that today. Also, they had Smurfs Lost Village, Surf's Up 2, and at the end of this year, they're having a Christmas movie come out called The Stars, so get excited for that. But yeah, Yodis uses Flix to help him out with pre-production and the pipeline challenges that presents. So yeah, you should do that now.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you, Maddie, for the introduction, and thank you, everyone, for joining our demo. And I'm going to talk a little bit about our process. And I mean, to be here at Siggraph, it means that we're really interested in effects, we're really interested in CG and animation. But the big thing for any movie that we make is story. Story is like the most important part. You go to see a movie really for the story. And it ends up coming up with a good story is a big challenge. It's pretty tough. And especially in animation where you start with a script and all the characters are really out of this world, any person that reads the script visualizes a completely different thing. So we depend pretty heavily on storyboarding everything that's in the script so that we can all visualize the same thing. And then we spend a couple of years refining that vision that it gets to a point that we make an interesting movie. So that part of iterations where like there's a whole group of people across multiple departments, and sometimes nowadays across multiple locations, it becomes a pretty big challenge. And the part that makes it challenging is one, it's a really fast-paced collaboration process, and there's a lot of complications to that come out of the volume of the work that gets created. So when I was just starting out to work on Flix, I just ran some statistics to see how many storyboard panels do we create per movie. And it ends up that, on average, we create about 100,000 storyboard panels through these iterations that we do over a few years. 100,000, and that's on average. There is actually like a lot of movies that go way over the 100,000 panels. So, and I'm just going to show something that I like to show people is this is what the organization of the storyboard panels was before Flix. So before Flix, you're talking about 100,000 files that a group of artists have to collaborate on, and it just becomes chaos when they're trying to organize everything manually. So, there's supposed to be a naming convention, which is here. You can kind of see what the naming convention should be, but as people start to work, they make copies of copies of copies, and then you end up with names like this, Monday morning copy and Monday night 1 copy. And what does that mean, really? What sequence is that, and what does it refer to? So it becomes pretty chaotic if you're actually trying to collaborate manually without a process in place to automate that organization of files. And this was pretty much the case at every studio that I would go to that wasn't using Flix, with the exception of very few, that it was this manual organization process for all the storyboard panels. And also another big challenge was that if you wanted to look at the edits, you really had to go to Editorial. Editorial always had the latest edit of the cut with all the sound and all the timing and everything. So if you wanted to look at the latest cut, you had to go to Editorial. Sometimes Editorial would export out movies, but then organizing those movies became chaotic as well. Which one is the latest movie, who has the movie, and all these other things. But with Flix, it's pretty easy. So when I log in Flix, this is what I see, and it's browser-based, so I can actually access Flix from anywhere in the world. And if I'm going to be working on the Emoji Movie, I'm going to click on the Emoji Movie, and then I get to see all the sequences that make up the movie. And if I'm interested in this sequence, I'm just going to click on that, and then I just tell Flix, give me the latest version. I don't have to go digging through the file system and try to find a bunch of files. And I can just do this pretty quickly, and I get the latest version of the storyboard panels. So from here, just as you would expect, from any storyboarding tool, I can take a look at all the storyboard panels. I can step through the panels, and it has a small player where I can take a look at the sequence. Flix also has this pitch mode, and if I go to that, I get to see a full version of that storyboard sequence. So I can, again, step through the panels, and I get a very cinematic view of the storyboard panels. If this sequence has gone to editorial and come back, I can actually press the spacebar, and it plays the sequence using editorial's timing and audio. So there's no longer that restriction of having to go to editorial to take a look at the sequence, the latest version of the sequence with the sound and the timing.
Come on, I don't want to be late. I can take it.
I'm not letting you go to work today.
Wait, what?
You're just not ready, son.
Come on! Working in the cube is an emoji's whole purpose in life. Everybody my age is working on the phone except for me.
Oh, sweetie, that's not true.
Ah!
Yeah, I'm gonna work on the phone and I'm only 10.
That's because I believe in you.
Should we wash our hands?
We're number 2. We're number 2.
See? You guys don't believe in me. I know I'm different, okay? But when I need to, I can be meh. I want to be a working emoji, you know, like everybody else, and then I would finally fit in, you know?
Oh, you fit in, honey.
No, I don't, Mom. I never have.
So this is like the most, this was the final version before it went into production, and you can kind of see that everything is coming together. They're really rough sketches, but you can see the characters, you can see their emotions, you can see the jokes and the sadness that the characters feel, disappointment from the main character, and you see how everything is working together. And to reach that point, as I said, it takes a lot of iterations, and I have here actually like an older version that was done probably a few months earlier. And I'm just going to play that really quickly, just as a way to show you how many things change over time to get to this point.
Pop, I can do it!
Son, there's something I need to tell you.
Come on! Working in the cube is an emoji's whole purpose in life. Everybody my age is working on the phone except for me.
That's not true.
Yay, I'm gonna work on the phone and I'm only 10.
That's my little squirt.
We're number 2. We're number 2. We're
Pop, if I don't work on the phone, if I don't help Alex...
So I'm just gonna, we don't have to play the whole thing, but you can kind of see, you know, like it's a completely different environment. The mom is missing. It doesn't work as well emotionally. They're in a park. You see the poops going by. The joke doesn't work as well. So there's a lot of things, you know, that change over time to get to the point where it is in the final version. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly run through the process of how you do revisions and how easy it is to actually do revisions and how easy it is to create storyboard panels through Flix. So let's say that I'm a storyboard artist and I'm taking over for another storyboard artist, or maybe I'm the storyboard artist that created the sequence. I'm asked to do some revisions. Or maybe I'm the director, and I'm looking at this in editorial, and as I look at an editorial, I think, you know what, some things are not working quite right. I need to change some of the expressions on some of the characters. Where this used to be a note that you would send to the story artist, and 2 days later, you would get a revision, this process is much more streamlined now. You can make a process within seconds. So, you know, I can actually like find the storyboard panel that I want to make that change. So let's find a panel from here. Let's say it's this one here. So I can just double click on the panel. It will find the Photoshop file for me that created that panel. It will have all the layers. So let's say that we want to make some eyelids, you know, make him look less excited. And make my change within Photoshop. And then I can, from Photoshop, all I have to do is just save it. I don't have to do anything special. I just save it. And Flix detects that I made a change to the storyboard panel. And I can see that it replaced now in the edit, it replaced it with my change. I don't have to worry about any of the technical side of things. It just goes there. And it doesn't actually delete the panel that was there. It versions up the panel. And if I click on the label, I can see the previous version. So if I change my mind and I want to go back to my previous version at any point, I can always switch back and go to the previous version. Same thing works for the dialogue, where the dialogue is text-based. Maybe I'm looking at this in the sequence, and then maybe I'm the writer, maybe I'm the director, and I see this, and I'm like, you know what? I don't think we need this part of the dialogue anymore. You know, like it actually works better without it. I can just make that change there, and anybody can make that change. And then again, you know, like I can save my change. And the second that I save this, it's instantly accessible by everybody else on the team, no matter where they are in the world. Some more stuff. Now we've done our change. And as I said, maybe I'm the director sitting in Editorial looking at it, and I just made my change. If I want to send now this to the editor, all I have to do is click the Publish to Editorial. Flix actually supports Avid's Media Composer, supports Premiere, it supports Final Cut Pro 7, and it also supports Nuke Studio. So, so I'm just going to click on that and say Publish. And Flix now goes through a process where it detects all the new panels. It makes a PDF for me, and it shows the sequence as a PDF. And one of the really cool things that it does, on any new panels, like this one was something that was revised earlier, this is our new panel here, it adds a little green box on top of the panel, letting Editorial know what changed. One key thing for Flix that we've done is that we didn't want to mess with the edit for the editors. We just wanted to make it really easy for them to recognize what's new. So this way, it just makes it easy for them to detect all the new changes. At the same time, it sends an email out to the team. The email looks kind of like this. It has a summary up on the top, and it says, Yoris published a new version. It's version 52. There is one new panel. He re-added some panels that weren't there in the previous version, in the previous publish. And it gives you like, then at the bottom, it gives you a list of more details. So, and also all these are links. So from my email, if I wanted to check what version 50 was, if I wanted to check what version 52 was, or if I wanted to check any of these panels, I can just click on the panel, and it pops up a new tab for me in Chrome, and I can take a look at the information that I'm looking for. OK, so so moving on. When Editorial updates the cut, Editorial has its own tool. So Editorial, when they launch their own version of Flix, it has their own version where from here they can actually import everything into Media Composer. And when they update the edits, through this, they can publish it back to Flix. And Flix will actually go through the process and break down what panels you're using. It will detect the panels, detect any effects, and detect the timing and all those kind of things, and then publishes everything back to Flix. Even if you added effects, it will grab the frames from your QuickTime movie, and it will insert it into your edits with all the effects. So then a storyboard artist will have a reference and know what those panels look in Editorial with those effects. Also, another thing that I want to show, I had a quick glimpse of this when I was loading the sequence. I'm just going to show some of more of the details and some of more of the information that exists here. If I go here, this is where I loaded the latest version of Flix. But Flix also has a complete history of all the changes that happened to the sequence. I can go back and look at the very first version that was created on the sequence. This is also color-coded by artists. So every artist gets its own color. It also has notes letting you know what came from Editorial. So here it tells you, like, this version came from Editorial. And if you do want to play the movie that came from Editorial, you can just click the Q icon from there. It will launch the movie that came from Editorial. And also, as I scroll down, you can see all the colors changing. So you can see on a real production sequence the level of collaboration that happens. People jumping in all the time, either to update the dialogue, change the panels, grab panels, and all these things. Another key thing about Flix is we talk about collaboration, and we talk about, actually, before I switch to, I want to show some 3D things, but before I switch to that, I want to show some more things in the storyboarding world. So I'm going to go back to this, and let's go back to our sequence. So for storyboard artists, I mentioned that, like, the key thing about Flix is really speed and collaboration. Make it really easy for the story artist to work, and make it really easy for them to collaborate. And I talk to storyboard artists all the time. I talk to the directors all the time. And one time I was talking to storyboard artists, and he said something really interesting. He said that I really like drawing on paper because on paper I don't have to worry about the technical stuff. I can just focus on the story. I doodle something. I flip to another page, doodle something else, flip to another page, doodle something else really quick, and I can keep going like that. Well, if I go in Photoshop, I have to think, like, OK, I have to load my template, and I have to do something, and then I have to save it somewhere, and I have to think of a name. What name am I going to call this? And then I have to put it in the right place and all this kind of stuff. So I thought, OK, yeah, that's a really interesting challenge. How do we remove all those technical steps and just make it really easy, streamlined process, kind of mimicking the paper stuff. So we added these buttons then in Photoshop. And if you have a Cintiq, you can even map them to the side of your Cintiq. So then by clicking on any of these buttons, it triggers an event from here. So I can tell Flix, give me a brand new piece of paper. So it gives you a new paper inside Photoshop. So then I can doodle something, and then I can say, OK, now send it to Flix. And it sends it to Flix. And then I can go, OK, give me another piece of paper. I doodle something else, and then I send it to Flix. So, like trying to mimic as much as we can that ease that story artists are looking for. It's all about speed. It's all about speed. Talking to some storyboard artists, like another story artist told me, like under a crunch, and don't tell the producers, but under a crunch, there's times that I've created 300 storyboard panels, maybe 400 storyboard panels in a single day, just to kind of see the volume of work that they have to do. And then also, like, they pass them on to an assistant, and it used to be before Flix, an assistant will have to sort through the panels, figure out where everything goes, and then figure out how those panels go to Editorial. But now the whole process is automated. Also, other storyboard artists are more technical, and other storyboard artists make a different use of Photoshop to speed up the process. So other storyboard artists will create multiple panels in a single Photoshop file, and will create hundreds of layers in the Photoshop file. Some storyboard artists use what is called layer comps. So layer comps toggle the visibility of layers on and off. So this way, you can create a bunch of panels in Photoshop really quickly. Other storyboard artists like to use what's called the animation timeline. And then again, it allows them to work really fast. But because they use these workflows, it used to be really complex for artists to collaborate on those panels. Because I might understand layer comps, somebody else might not understand them, and it would be really hard for them to revise those panels. So with Flix, we created a tool that speeds up their process. So if I'm working this way, I can tell Flix, send each frame over to Flix, and then it splits up. It recognizes that I have at least 5 panels, and it splits them up for me, and it inserts those 5 panels inside Flix for me automatically. I don't have to worry about the naming each panel, and it switches automatically the layer visibility so that they all come across. But at the same time, if I'm going to revise any of those panels, if I double-click on that panel, it won't load that panel with like that Photoshop file with the 300 layers. It will load the Photoshop. It will load only the layers that are necessary for that storyboard panel. So then I can just easily make my revision. And once I make my revision, maybe we make like larger eyes. Once I make my revision, I can just quickly save it, and it goes back into Flix. Really, again, speed and collaboration. It is easy for them to work, and collaborate. And that level of collaboration works across applications as well. Some artists like to use Photoshop. Other artists like to use Storyboard Pro. Other artists like to use TV Paint. Flix integrates really well with all those tools. So and there's scripts that mimic the same thing that we have in Photoshop, whether you work in TV Paint, whether you work in Storyboard Pro. And if the Storyboard panels were created in one application, you can actually edit them in other applications as well. Once we realized, we can do this cross-platform application and sharing thing, and it works really well, we added that same sharing stuff through Maya. So you can be working in a 3D environment, and you can be exporting from Maya into here. Or maybe you have your sequence, and it's edited. I can take my entire sequence and export it into Maya, and it will take the storyboard panels, put them on an image plane, use the timing, create all the shots in Maya for me, and I can actually start working on an entire sequence. And actually, in this sequence, they've done some of that. So I'm going to switch over to another branch of that same sequence. And I'm just going to load as an example some stuff that the layout artists were doing. So the layout artists were looking at the storyboard panels. And I noticed that what they did is that they created 3D versions of that sequence. So then they can give an idea. They can start doing sort of rough layouts, the process that we call staging. It's kind of like previous, but without timing. You just do the stills. You do the whole staging through stills. And at the same time, they created the same version of the storyboard panel, but without the background. So then if a story artist looks at this and says, oh, this is really cool, there's background, and maybe I need to make some storyboard panels, I'm just going to use the background from there. And you might have not noticed that. And if I go back to this and just load my sequence, and I'm going to double-click again any of these panels, just going to turn off some layers. There it is. There's my 3D background. So their story artists were taking the 3D backgrounds that were done in Maya and exported really quickly. And through Flix, they could just double-click on them, opens up, in Photoshop, draw the panels on top, save it. And that level of collaboration never existed before Flix. It was the first time for us that we had one application that 3D artists could collaborate really easily with 2D artists. OK. So some more stuff, too. So collaboration, pretty key. Some more things, too, that were really cool through Flix. Many times we have story artists that work across locations. Sometimes it might be the director. Sometimes it might be the director that's traveling. And maybe the director is in New York to do a recording shoot with one of the actors. And I created a sequence, and I want to show it to the director, but he's not around to actually show it with the director. And it's really hard for me to book some time to show this. So I want to pitch the sequence to him. So I have these new ideas, and I want to pitch the sequence to him. So one of the things that we've added in Flix is the ability to record your session. So I can actually go into the pitch mode that I had before, where I can step through the panels. And I can go back to the beginning, and I can say, record my session. And what it's doing right now is actually recording the storyboard panels as I step through the panels. So it's recording the timing, and at the same time, I can actually turn on the microphone as well, and it records my voice, and it records the timing. So then I can record my pitch at my desk, and then once I'm done, all I have to do is just save it with my timing, save it with my audio, and then I just send an email to the director and say, hey, load version 58 and 59 in Flix, and then that's my version. I can even type a comment in there. Just take a look at that and tell me what you think. And it's accessible again by everybody else on the team. And I've seen in many cases where it's great for the editorial team to know what the pitch was like during an executive pitch. A lot of times as you revise the story sequence, you pitch it to the executives, you pitch it to the director, and then they say, OK, this is great, send it to editorial. And if they record that session, when it goes to editorial, they know what the artist intended. They know what timing the artist intended to use. They know the pacing of the sequence, and they know which jokes worked and which didn't. So it gives them a head start to actually start editing everything together. Just really quickly, some of the last thing that I was going to show, Flix is can be extended pretty easily through plugins. All these things that I showed before, the Avid export, the Premiere export, Storyboard Pro, and all those things, they're actually Python plugins. And even the editing applications, TV Paint, and all the stuff, the Maya scripts, and all those things. And we included a bunch of other plugins. So for instance, if you wanted to export the dialogue as a text file, I can pretty easily export my dialogue as a text file, and which makes it really easy to figure out what lines exist in the sequence and go to recording sessions with my lines as text. So there's a lot of really cool ways you can actually manipulate the data that exists within Flix. Or if you have your own tools to send something to production, you can create your own script to streamline your process. So any studio then can extend it by either taking the scripts that come with Flix and then just changing them around, or you can create your own scripts from scratch. So as Mari said earlier, at Sony Pictures Animation, we released 4 projects this year. You've seen the level of chaos that existed before Flix. And there'd be absolutely no way that we'd be able to release 4 movies this year if we didn't have Flix to automate that big chunk of the process for us. So I hope you enjoyed the demo. Thank you very much, everyone. And thank you. And also, before you walk away, if you lift the under your seats, you can find T-shirts, and feel free to pick up a T-shirt for you guys. And thank you very much again.